Hello, friends, and welcome to today's episode of Booked. I'm joined today by the lovely Devin Ford, the owner and creator and genius behind the website BroMantasy. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Genius is that's a stretch, but I'll take it.
Look, I'm trying to give you a compliment, dude.
Hey, I'll own it. I'll say that.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I didn't introduce myself. My name's on the screen. I'm Saffron Asteria. I'm really glad that you agreed to do this because your efforts sort of came across my screen just like randomly because Booked was nominated for your community awards.
Yes.
And I was like, what the hell is this thing? And I looked into it and I was like, okay, I like this and I want more people to know about it. So hopefully we can delve into everything that you do. And I mean, to do with this, we don't have to get to your personal life. But yeah, so for the benefit of those who haven't heard of you before or haven't heard of BroMantasy before, could you tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I run BroMantasy.com is how it all started. It's a long form review blog that I got back into reading in January of last year after not touching a book for 14 years. But I had my second kid, and when she was around 3 months, she refused to sleep, and the TV woke her up, no matter how low it was. So I went to the next best thing, which was books. And then it's funny, my wife tried to convince me to get back into reading, and I was like, Then she's like, read ACOTAR with me. And I was like, what is this? And then I looked it up and I was like, I'm not reading this. But then she's like, come on, JJ Watt's reading it. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll look at it. And then here we are. She DNFs at 100 pages, and I read the whole series in like 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Yep. She's not a huge reader, so that's why I thought it was kind of funny. But and that kind of evolved into when I started looking in the space, I didn't see a lot of first of all, I didn't see any guys talking about Romantasy at all. I didn't know Romantasy was like its whole own thing. I just assumed it was like fantasy romance still. I was very out of the game. So that's kind of what sparked me creating the review site. And then I started actually using my Instagram in like November, just to connect with some authors, indie authors and stuff like that. And it kind of ballooned very quickly, very unexpectedly. But now I tell people in the one short sentence that you probably wanted, is that I spend a lot of my time talking about books that land for people who didn't think they would.
Interesting. So it's quite a big leap to go from enjoying a book to reviewing a book. Why did you start doing that? Was it just for you, or were you initially doing it to get convince other people to read them?
So part of it was selfish. Part of it was motivated by the fact that I just didn't see anybody in the space talking about it. The selfish part of it was The Devils by Joe Abercrombie was coming out, and I don't remember what blog I saw, and it was like, if you write reviews on Goodreads, you can get early copies of books. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. And then I was like, I didn't see The Devils on Goodreads, and I was like, oh, or not Goodreads, I'm sorry, on NetGalley, which is like the marketplace for everybody to get ARCs. So I started writing reviews on the site and made the site, and then I just emailed the publisher. I had like 0 followers. I want to say I had like 50 followers on Instagram at the time. The site was brand new. It saw like no traffic. And she was awesome. The publicist that I happened to open my email was like, oh, I love this. I love the idea behind it. I'll gladly send you an ARC. And I got the very first ARC I ever got was from or for The Devils, and it was physical, which is
that's
still really mind-blowing.
Cool. That's really cool.
But yeah, so and then it just kind of it spiraled.
Yeah, I'd say so. So when I was looking through the site, I saw, well, it felt like, yes, it is kind of directed at men or male readers, but it doesn't feel like it's like exclusively for male readers. It's very much like a supportive environment to try and encourage other dudes to read, but like anybody could go to your website and find something to read and something to enjoy, because you have a more complex rating system and reviewing system than like Goodreads, for example, where it's basically like everybody rates the same or very similar, and there's no real guide as to what constitutes 5 stars, what constitutes 1 star. And it's a real mixture of like quality of reviews, and some of it are people that didn't like the quality of the print book that they got from Amazon, and then they complain about it in the wrong place. So could you break down like the review system for us?
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's been iterated a little bit over time, but I finally kind of landed on what I liked. So much like you, I noticed that ratings were rough, to say the least, on
Mhm.
Goodreads. Very hard to discern what is what.
Mhm.
Everything is 5 stars or 1 stars most of the time. Like, there's no nuance.
Mhm.
So when I started doing the ratings, I was thinking about like what I cared about when I was reading a book, but what I would want to know about, like if I was going to look for a book.
Mm.
So I tackle all the typical things. I touch on prose, world building, magic systems, plot, all the things you'd expect. But then
Mhm.
I also rate what I call reader experience.
Mm.
So that goes into, I think on the site, I call it between the sheets because it was
Yeah.
just funny at the time, and now it's there, so I can't do anything about it.
It's still funny.
Thank you. But so that'll cover like spice, but
Mhm.
also the romantic element of it. So it's not so much the rating will depend on how much on page like intimacy happens,
Mm.
but that section of the review will kind of go a little deeper into like, is it an emotional connection? Is it enhancing the emotional connection between the characters? Does it add to it, or is
Mhm.
it just on the page to be there? Um, and then the other two is I call it the darkness factor, which is I read a lot of grimdark, heavy books,
Mm.
and it kind of just dives into how dark the themes are, but also how detailed and how much explanation will go into what those themes are.
Mhm.
So, like, if there's torture, it's one thing to say, "Oh, you got tortured in the corner," and then move on. It's a whole
Mhm.
nother thing to depict what's happening.
For sure, yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and then the last one, I call it the public comfort scale, which is always my favorite because I get to be as goofy as I can be about like where you're reading these books.
Mhm.
But it's basically if I'm sitting in the airport and this book is open, how recognizable is it?
Mhm.
How wild is the cover? And am I gonna be super uncomfortable if somebody looks at me with that look that they're like, I know what you're reading? You know? So that one was always kind of fun, especially from like a
Mhm.
guy's perspective. I think this is
Yeah.
probably the one area in all of things where guys might have it a little more difficult. And
Mm.
I say that with such understanding that that is
I
not the
get what
norm.
you're
No,
saying.
no, I know,
It's
but
okay.
it's the internet.
Yeah.
Um, little over explanation, but yeah. So
Uh-huh.
I am way more prone to like have fourth wing in my hand on a subway and go, I put this in my bag until I'm off
Mm.
the public transport, uh, than I think somebody else would be. So
Mhm.
I found that very interesting. And I thought that it's a good way to say, hey, this is what this book entails. You might not want to walk into your Starbucks blind, having no idea what this book is
Mhm.
with it in your hand, because people might ask questions.
Mm.
But yeah, that's it. It kind of breaks it all down. And then at the end, I just kind of give a recap. They're incredibly long. Uh, I do break them down into
Mhm.
sections and stuff so you can jump cut and skip around to what you care about for
Mhm.
anybody. Some of them hit like 4,000 words. It's obnoxious,
Mhm.
but we love it.
Well, I can tell that you really love doing this, so I
Yes.
think that's obviously going to translate to the quality of work that you produce. But it's interesting that you acknowledge that there are certain people that might read certain books that might be
Mhm.
put off by how they'll be perceived if they read those books. Because
Mhm.
I noticed that you even on the website, I think it's on the about page, that you had sort of dismissed romantasy as like I'm not really going to like that because it's going to be all ooey gooey or whatever.
Mhm.
And actually, you found that these stories are incredible and enjoyable, and I think you said it enhances the experience. And I find that very interesting because I think we said before this started that there is this like new wave of readers who are a bit more accepting of being able to just like read whatever might actually be interesting regardless of the genre. Um, so yeah, I'm assuming that you've had feedback from people saying like, "Oh my god, this changed my life."
Yeah, it's funny. I've had a lot of people say that they never thought they've avoided genres completely because of the romance factor. Like they didn't think they would enjoy romance. And a lot of the time what I'll try to do is like people somebody recently picked up A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwen, which was one of my favorite books last year. And for those that don't know, long story short, it is a romantasy, but it's basically Peaky Blinders with magic.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, phenomenal book. But it's the other thing is that like the romance is definitely like a part of the plot, but most people don't care about the romance. If we're going to call a spade, they don't care about the romance. They care about the fact that there is, you know, intimacy on the page and it's detailed, you know, and sometimes it's ridiculous. Like I made a post about this recently about like some of the fantasy terms for genitals are insane.
Hilarious.
It cracks me up and it takes me right out of it, to be honest with you. Like I'd much rather you just, you know, use the word.
Yeah.
Like I don't care what it is. Don't tell me that it's hard steel wrapped in velvet. Like what are we talking about?
Who's calling it that?
Oh, please, that and caverns. Everything's about a cavern. I forget, somebody on that post wrote something about like using the description of like folds. I was like, if I ever walked into my house at any time and said that to my wife, I was like, I'd live on the street. It wouldn't even matter how complimenting I was being by it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say, I think most people avoid it because of that. And how I try to frame it is usually like, what do you read? So a lot of the time it's classic fan, or I don't want to say classic fantasy, but more, you know, traditional fantasy. People will say, oh yeah, you know, that's what I read. I love it. Da, 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 da. And I'll say, okay, what do you like about it? Oh, I love the characters. I love the side people. I just love, like, I was devastated when so-and-so got killed in this book and blah, blah, blah. And most of the time it's Game of Thrones because like just about everybody's read Game of Thrones. And I'm like, there is so much on-page intimacy in Game of Thrones, let alone the horrid stuff that goes with it around that. But even the normal, like, hey, this is actual love. Most of these books are 2 or 3 chapters max. Like literally 2 or 3 chapters max. Like, yeah, there's a lot of yearning and there's a lot of romance, but the actual on-page spice is so minimal. And I'm like, you're driving an entire book away because you're worried about 3 chapters. And that has convinced more people who have then come back to me and been like, you were completely right. Like, this is totally my wheelhouse. And I try to tell people all the time, I'm like, you can't just recommend random romantasy to people because everybody's going to have a different tolerance level and everybody's going to have a different level that they're willing to dip their toe into. So like, I frankly, I can't stand, and a little spoiler for the reel that I have tomorrow, but ACOTAR is always recommended as the first romantasy people read. You cannot recommend that book to people, in my opinion. It's
without spoiling your reel.
So no, but yeah, it's my problem with it is it's one there's a good amount of spice towards the back of the book. It's not, I take it back, not a good amount of spice, but it's very detailed, very quick when it gets into it. But it's more so that book for the first 2/3 it's written like an epic fantasy.
Oh, really?
Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but when you're trying to get somebody, guys might do a little better with it, in my opinion, than recommending it to women as their first or romantasy, because if you're coming from the romance genre, you're sitting through 2/3 of a book that is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, basically, and an enormous amount of world building and plot laying and like backstory to set up the series. And for somebody that's coming from a 250, 300 page contemporary romance from, you know, we're 15 pages in, she's found the dude and now it's the angst and whatever else is happening for the whole book until the, you know, happily ever after. That's a hard sell.
Yeah.
It's a very hard sell to get somebody who's not used to that to buy into it. So I say it, I think people will take it originally as like guys won't like it. I actually think that ACOTAR is a better suggestion for people who like epic fantasy going into the genre than somebody who likes contemporary romance going into it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you're totally right. You kind of need to meet people where they are and where their comfort levels are, because sometimes you only get one chance with people. and then they won't ever trust your suggestions ever again because you spend I don't know how fast of a reader you are, but I mean you can spend like hours and hours and hours reading, and if there's no payoff or you've not enjoyed it, like I will DNF books. I'm not going to pretend like there are too many books out there for me to spend all my time reading the ones I don't like. And it doesn't mean they're bad, it just means that they didn't grab me, and that's totally fine. But I found that I never would have gone anywhere near fantasy. Lord of the Rings is an exception, and I read that when I was a kid. So I never would have gone near fantasy at all. And then I got into this indie space, and I was reading books because I was interviewing people or because I wanted to get to know them better. And I was like, excuse me, where's all this good fantasy come from? Because some of them aren't even that long. Some of them, because of I'm a huge indie fan.
Same.
I love them. Oh, Mavericks.
I have a whole indie shelf back.
Oh, I love that so much. But yeah, I find that they're able to do something a bit different. They don't have to stick to the same kind of plot structures, and they don't have to have like 600 pages. Or if they do, they can just do it however the hell they want. And there are some that I read and I think that was fine. I didn't love it, but it was fine. And there are some where I think, oh man, if I need more people to know about this book specifically, because this changed my mind about the whole thing. And then I get to talk to them, and then that makes the whole thing even more rich and exciting. So I'm like, what are your motivations? What was with the dragon? Like, or whatever the thing is. So do you find that you lean more towards those fantasy elements in the books that you read, or do you kind of go outside of that sphere? Because I know that has like 50 million different combinations.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely lean more fantasy. I actually, if anything, I lean more like sci-fantasy.
Oh, interesting.
So, the typical bro answer here is I do love Red Rising. But I also Red Rising, I still have 2 books left, and I just kind of like shelved it, not because I don't want to finish it. It's just other stuff has come up. But Sun Eater is hands down my favorite series ever. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that it has epic space battles and all that. Like, it's the vehicle, you know what I mean, to tell the story. Christopher Ruocchio just does such an incredible job, and it's so innovative. It reads like an incredibly polished indie. That's probably the best way to put it. So very similar to you. What I love about indie is that they're able to experiment without fear. They don't have this like marketing overhead that says, hey, you need to frame it this way so we can market it and sell it. It's very much, you want to do the weird shit, you can.
Yes.
And it, sometimes it works great, other times it doesn't. And I say the same thing about trad. There's plenty of trad books that are not good.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how it works. But I think fantasy allows authors a little more creative freedom in general to kind of expand on ideas, because they're not locked into this needs to feel like reality. Like contemporary romance is a good example. I haven't read a ton of it, so take with a grain of salt here. But one I recently read, it was called Santa Cutie.
Oh, okay.
It was a Christmas rom-com. And it was good. It was fun. It was lighthearted. It ended up having like a lot of crazy deep themes that I did not expect, for what it's worth. All about, she was like in a cult and escaped the cult and wasn't allowed to have Christmas, so she was obsessed with Christmas. And then the dude she meets is a Scrooge who hates Christmas, and that's the story.
Classic.
Yeah, but it was really fun. I mean, it was fun. It was good, but it's centered in reality. They're in some like town in Ohio. They have. You can't even have an actual Santa Claus, because then it's fantasy. Sorry to spoil anybody who's got the small people out there.
They shouldn't be watching this show at this time of the day.
Yeah, very, very fair point. But anyway, yeah. So I think that what I love about fantasy is that it allows that creative like space to move a little bit, and it also allows relationships to kind of be more of a focus. And I know that sounds wild, but that's what grounds these in reality. You can write a fantasy, and if everybody's, like a hobgoblin and this other thing and an alien, it's never going to connect. So you need to almost do more with your character work, in my opinion, when you write a fantasy than you do in a contemporary or a lit fic or whatever, because that's the part that grounds you in enough where you can connect with a book that's not real.
That's such a good point. I'd never really considered that, because if you're reading about humans, then you know humans, you know what their whole deal is, and you know the variety of emotions that they can produce or experience, and even what their bodies can do. I'm not saying we need to hear about orcs doing it or whatever. If that's what floats your boat, great, love that for you. But if you're presenting this like creature or a being that you don't know anything about, you have to kind of profile them, but you have to do it in such a way, for my enjoyment anyway. I need the writer to do it in such a way that kind of like drip feeds it in context, rather than like, here's a fact sheet about this creature and then I have to remember all those things. That's fascinating.
Yeah, the exposition dumps kill me. I will. It is my one beef with
them.
Epic fantasy. It's such a common thing. It's like the first 250 pages is, I don't need every detail of the marble statue in the courtyard in the fairy realm. I don't care.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's just a preference thing. Like, no beef towards anybody that writes like that. I don't mean it that way. It's just more so like, I don't have whatever they call it, the aphantasia or whatever, where you can't picture things.
I don't know what the name is, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I don't have that to an extent. I think I just have a bad imagination. So like every dog is a golden retriever when I'm reading a book. Character descriptions, even to an extent, like I understand them and I get it, but until I see fan art, I know who it is, but I'm not in my head like, oh my god, look at Hadrian's jacked abs, and like I don't remember these details. I don't even know what color his hair is. I think it's brown. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how it works. Like if it wasn't on the book, I wouldn't know what he would look like. But yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I think, like, to your point too, is probably why I love Sun Eater so much, is there's a ton of like alien races and all of these kind of things, but the way Christopher Rucchio manages to take them, and I don't want to say humanize them, because he makes them different enough that they're still creepy and they're the antagonists, but he draws enough parallels with humanity where it makes them feel like a viable thing that's real and like a real threat. It's one thing to say, like, aliens versus predators and like the old Alien movies where it's got a 5-foot head coming off the back of it. Like, yeah, it's creepy, it's scary, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna read horror if I want to be scared, and frankly, I don't read horror not because I'm scared of it. It just, I don't really get scared. I find it kind of like I'm like kind of bored.
Interesting. I love horror.
Oh, sorry.
Don't be sorry. I don't care. This is the beauty of reading and humans in general, is that it doesn't make any difference to me if you don't like what I like. It makes
I agree. Difference. I'm the same way, but I always it's that natural people pleaser in me that's always like, oh my god, I don't mean to offend you.
I am not easily offended. I was a chef, I was a taxi driver, and I'm British. Ooh. I wouldn't worry. It's all good. But yeah, so it's really interesting to hear what people's sort of preferences are in terms of the reading experience, because I find, I'm going to go back to ratings and reviews for a second.
Sure.
I find that I don't look at reviews before I read books. I like to see it upon reflection, to see like, what was their experience with this thing that I had experience with, especially if I didn't particularly like it, because I'd like to know, like, did I miss something? Did I misunderstand what the writer was trying to get across, or whatever it is? So I don't look at reviews until after the fact. So when you're looking for recommendations for books, because you're going to look somewhere, whether it's on a website or whatever, do you look at reviews to inform your decisions, or is it kind of a mix?
It's pretty rare. So the whole reason I ended up on Instagram was because I was trying to find recommendations, and every time I Googled something, it was just an Instagram video would get pop up. That was like what Google was like. Yeah, Google was like Goodreads, Instagram, Reddit. And I was like, I like Reddit, don't get me wrong, but Reddit's a rough time. It's just a constant argument. It's an argument all the time. And it was the same thing like Twitter. Like Twitter used to be good. Twitter is not good anymore.
It's not.
So like that was another thing. It was like anytime somebody would be like, oh, I'm looking for a book rack, and I'd be like, oh, this sounds cool. And then 12 people would be like fighting over one piece of the, and I'm like, I don't care. I just wanted a book rack. But yeah, so Instagram did a good job at that anyway. And that was kind of what drew me to that. But I don't ever watch like full reviews. I obviously don't do any spoilers, but even spoiler free, like I will very much skim it just to try to get an idea of what the story is, but that's it. Because I don't like blurbs. If I learned anything from Red Rising, and if you have not read it, don't read the back of the book.
Okay.
In my opinion, it spoils one of the most essential plot points to the entire series, let alone the first book on the blurb. And I get why marketers do it, because it's not the focal point of the story. But it is literally the drive for everything that happens. And it just gets spoiled. And I think it would have taken the impact of what happens in that moment away from me. So I don't even read blurbs. I mean, to be frank, 100% honest, I'm a horrible, like, that cover looks sick, I'm going to pick this book up.
I do that too. I will absolutely do that too. And I rarely read blurbs because, again, I'm the same. I don't want to know what happens in the book. I want to read it and then find it out by accident. I've got a couple of books on my shelf that came like today, and I literally clicked buy that one because they had gorgeous covers and they were like in the horror category or whatever. And I will get my recommendations on like, this book was awful or disgusting, and I'm like, that sounds like something I want to read. So what are the characteristics of, or like selling points that you look for? Like, if you're going to look for recommendations, what are your key things?
I don't know what it says about my mental health and probably need a little therapy, but I want to know that it's going to like really, really absolutely like drop kick me in the chest, devastate me at some point.
Really?
I love a book that makes me go, oh my God, that was so horrible. I want to feel dread and fear for these characters as I read through it, because that's how I'm invested. I know I'm invested. If you can make me give a shit if you kill your character, or if I'm worried that this character is going to die, then I'm in. It doesn't have to be love either. Like, I think the reason I got so drawn to BroMantasy is that it's one thing romance writers do right, and a lot of romantasy writers are, in my opinion, or not a lot, let me rephrase that. A decent amount of romantasy writers were romance writers first. A great example of that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. She was a romance writer. She wrote a ton of contemporary, like a well-renowned, like bestseller, contemporary romance writer. You can tell for good and bad, because the fantasy in the first book is rough around the edges. The world building's a little distorted. It's not, again, I'm not a huge exposition person. I'm not even like detail the statue, but you got to have some. And it's there, but it's kind of disjointed, and the plotting was a little tough. Like, I definitely think there was plot holes, and she made up for them in later books and stuff like that. But, and this is a book, like, God forbid you critique it, but it's true. Like, I loved it. I enjoyed it. It's a fun read. The characters were infuriating, and the main character actually drives me crazy most of the time. But that's because I care about what's going on, and I care about the side characters, and she annoys me. And I joke all the time, but if you can piss me off, it's almost better, because that means I'm invested in it enough to be annoyed. Like, it's just incredible. But yeah, it's those, I want to be so emotionally invested one way or the other that, I mean, I don't care what genre it is. If you can find me a horror book that does that, I'll read it.
That's my goal. That's my goal for 2026. I'm very similar. If I forget who was talking in the book, or if I'm like, wait, who was that? Did we speak about Dave before? I know kind of at that point that I'm not that invested in what happens to them, as you say, or what the journey is in the first place. I there are some, I don't know if you find this. Sometimes the stories are so good that I don't even care if the writing's not that good.
Yes. Oh my god, yes.
Because that happens
People
all the
people go
time.
crazy, like, Callie Hart just released Brimstone, which is the follow-up to Quicksilver, which is, like, one of the biggest indie to trad romantasies, like, ever.
Mhm.
Um, it's got that, I call it, like, potato chip book. Like, it just hits all the notes where you just
Mhm.
keep eating it, like, you're not like, "Oh my god, I'm eating filet and it's amazing and I'm gonna live here forever if I can."
Mhm.
Like, I opened a bag of chips and I'm like, "I know I should probably stop eating at the halfway point of this bag, but I'm probably gonna crush the bag." Because it's just fun, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's not, I don't have to get deep into it, and again, like, eh, I love this genre, and this is why I am so comfortable to talk about it this way,
Mhm.
and I know how easy it is to see it as, like, because there are so many male creators that just shit on this genre just because
Mhm.
whether it's for clicks, clout, whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
that is not me
Yeah.
by any means. I want this genre to be great. When I call a book a potato chip book, it doesn't make it a bad book. It is
Mhm.
an incredibly enjoyable read. Um,
Yeah.
but Brimstone, all I saw the discourse about Brimstone. Oh my god, this thing didn't go through enough editing.
Mhm.
So on and so forth. Like, oh, it was missing commas, punctuation, X, Y, Z. And I was like, first of all, I don't know when everybody on TikTok became a literary editor now, who's
Right?
doing, copy edits, but
Mhm.
whatever. But then also, what I saw the contrast, and this is why I know people are looking for problems versus enjoying what they're reading,
Mhm.
is everybody that did the audiobook didn't complain once. Loved it,
Mhm.
10 out of 10. It was amazing. I can't wait for book 3. Did. Not a single well, I don't wanna say not a single, but you know what I mean. Like, the
Yeah.
majority of the discourse
Mhm.
for the audiobooks was that it was phenomenal. Just as good as the first one, better. Thank
Mm.
God for this character, that character. I miss them. Da 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 da.
Mhm.
Because when somebody's reading the book in your ear, you don't know if the comma wasn't there.
Yeah.
Maybe they just assumed it was.
Mhm.
Whatever the case may be. But again, you're not a developmental editor, TikToker. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you're not. You're a reader. Like,
Yeah.
I'm all for reviewing books and being critical and saying your piece. I have no beef
Mhm.
with that. People are allowed to say whatever they want, basically, as long as
Mhm.
it's within the bounds of law and all that other stuff. But you can't tell me that, like, you care this much about how a book is written, but then you're hyping up the other book that you're hyping up, and I'm like, I
Mm.
bet if I go through that thing, there's some bad commas. This is just popular discourse right now.
Mhm.
You don't care about the copy edits. You're not going through Tolkien's work and be like, "Oh, man, Tolkien didn't put a comma there in Lord of the Rings. Write
Yeah.
it off."
Yeah. I think there are some levels of quality where it's clear that maybe it did need an extra edit, but
Oh,
at the end of the day, and I've said this before, that book's out there now.
yeah.
Has the writer asked for the critique? No. So why are you giving it? Like, who
Yeah,
cares? And
it
it's like it's already been read. Hundreds or thousands of people have read it. So what does it matter? It wasn't for
it's
you, and that's fine.
the internet has become a place where, I mean, thankfully, because I enjoy it, everybody gets an opinion,
Mhm.
but it also became a place very quickly where the loudest opinion, normally in a negative way,
Mhm.
is not only amplified but replicated by everybody.
Mhm.
Because people wanna jump on, you see so and so went on TikTok and said that this book was trash because, there's 52 pages that missed punctuation or whatever.
Mhm.
And that video gets 500,000 views because any algorithm, for the most part, I will say Instagram, at least in my experience, is better than the other platforms.
Mhm.
But they amplify negativity because that is what our brains are conditioned to look for. We
Mhm.
we get caught in negative cycles. We deep dive. That's why they call it doom scrolling.
Mhm.
All of these things. We're not scrolling through 500 happy puppy videos.
Mhm.
We're scrolling through 500 horrid this thing, that thing, I hate this thing, because it's just the way our brains work.
Mhm.
Um, there's a ton of, I get a little too deep in random topics sometimes, but there's a ton of research on this.
Mhm.
But people see that success and they say, "Oh, I wanna replicate it." So now you go into this book with the intention of hating it. So if you go in with the intention of not having a good time, you're probably not going to have a good time.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that there is not enough. I don't think there are enough people calling that out.
Yes.
Oh, hello. We've got lots of people that have joined us. I keep forgetting to put them on the screen. I'm gonna quickly go because my point fell off a cliff and I forgot what I was gonna say. So I'm gonna just go along and say no, that was my fault. My brain just sort of like hard reset and I was like, where am I? Hello, Mark. I'm gonna go up the list. Nice to see you. I'm not sure who this person is, but thank you for being here. I doubt that your given name is Bouncing Boredom, but it might have been your chosen name. We've also got Grace here. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Mike Molman. I'm just gonna keep waving as I click on this, like I'm on some sort of kids' TV show. Alex, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't think I've missed anyone. I might have done if I have. Oh, Glenn. Hello, Glenn. Hello, creative writing wizard. I like your this.
I wanted to give the princess wave.
I love it.
I don't know. Maybe I'm aging myself. This was the Princess Diana wave.
Oh, hello, Chris. How you doing? Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to change it back. I just forget what people's usernames are. And I also
I'm notorious for doing
names incorrectly. And I've said this before, but I know that you know who ZB Steele is. In my head, he's Zebby Steele. That's what his name is.
I love that.
So when I see it, I can't say it properly.
It's deserved. It's what he gets for putting initials on his book instead of just writing Zach.
Yeah. There you go. Ah, hello, E.L. Montague. Oh my goodness, wrong one. Hang on. It was moving. Who also happens to like BroMantasy too. Well, check out BroMantasy for some book recommendations.
Nice. Promise they're kind of good.
let me put it on the screen too.
Thank you.
So the link to this website is in the description of this video. So whether you're watching now or you're watching the recording, do go check it out, because something that I've said on the show before, I'm sure, is I absolutely hate star ratings. I think they are nonsense and I don't trust them. So I always give 5 stars. I'll tell you why, because my enjoyment of a book is subjective, and who am I to say whether or not a book is good or not? The way you present stuff is that you've broken it down into all these categories that actually mean something and that are measurable and people can understand, like, what does that relate to? And you're also giving your opinion as to, like, this is the type of book that you might like and this is the kind of experience you're going to have, and that's worth something. Like these long form reviews, I don't use them because I don't find them helpful, because I go, that looks gory, I'll read that. But it's a fantastic tool for people to be able to use, especially if they're a bit scared about going into this genre or going into, branching out into something different. So yeah, for anyone that's just sort of joined a bit later, you should go check it out, because it's the style of reviewing that I personally think is actually helpful, rather than people being like, my opinion is incredibly important and I'm going to give you very little context about that. I think it's good or I think it's bad. And there's nothing necessarily like wrong with that if that's helpful to you. But yeah, I think when you're trying to convince people to try something new and maybe a bit scary, I think this is a very good way of like hand holding them into that experience for sure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, nothing drives me more crazy than when somebody tells me, "Oh, that book's mid." Okay, why? Why is it mid? What didn't land for you? Because the other thing, like, I will, I try to keep things framed correctly, and I try not to be overly positive. I don't ever really get flowery. And I will critique things that I personally didn't enjoy, but I will always make sure to frame why I didn't enjoy it and what exactly about it that I didn't enjoy, without spoiling, of course, but because I may, like, for example, you read horror, I read fantasy more often than not saying that we don't genre a lot, but if I'm reviewing a horror book and I'm like, the suspense didn't really get me, there was a lot of plot twists and they just didn't land. It didn't have that horror vibe, but the elements of it, like the fog felt overdone, or maybe the gloomy dark room as he entered was a little overused, you might love that. That might be your favorite part of a horror book, is the ambiance and the atmosphere that's created. And that's what I think takes to make a decent horror story, is that it needs that ambiance and that, like, dready, I don't know exactly the word I'm looking for, but all that to say, if you read my review, while I may not have rated it as high, or like I may not have like loved the book, you can take away from what I didn't like and say, yeah, but I like all those things, and I like the things you liked, and now you have a 5-star read that I read 3. So it's, again, star rating is subjective. I recently got into this discourse on Instagram, more so kind of about indie, and more so kind of shitting on Amazon and how they use product ratings basically to rate books. So if it's under 4 stars, it doesn't even get shown, which I think is ridiculous, because while I agree that they are subjective, my issue with a 5-star rating system is that objectively 3 is good.
Yeah.
3.5 is better than good. But people will freak out when you say that. So, I mean, honestly, I almost am very close to just moving the final rating out, and not giving a final star rating, and more giving a, would I recommend it? And if I do, who I think it's for. I think I kind of want to shift towards that more as things have changed, especially now that I'm doing like short form video content and stuff. It feels so unnatural in a video for me to go 4.5 stars. And I'm like, as soon as it comes out of it, it's one thing to write it, because like in the context of all of that, but that's a 3,500 word review compared to a 30-second to 1-minute reel, so I'm like, this book does this. It's so cool. I loved this part. 3.5 stars. Like, it's ridiculous. It's just, it doesn't fit, in my opinion. I think it's just, a friend of mine, Turner Main, who is Turner of the Pages on Instagram, he does a Reese's review scale. So he takes Reese candies and he gives books however many Reese cups. And that's it. He doesn't say that what the top amount of Reese cups is. He never talks about that. He literally just says 4 Reese's, 6 Reese's.
That's kind of cute. I like that.
I break his stones, because I'm like, you just want an excuse to buy a bag of candy. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. But it made for a good video.
This is a lovely compliment. Hang on.
Oh, thank you, Alex.
It's coming up. There we go. That's very lovely. I find that if I look for, I don't even look for them. It's just the algorithm that I'm tickling the way I'm tickling it. I find that the most impactful recommendations are, if you liked this thing, then you'll probably like these things. Or if you like this characteristic, then here are some recommendations. And then they go on my TBR. And if I get the good vibes. Sometimes it's just based on gut feeling for me. And I go, that's probably something I will like. There have been a few instances where I can't even remember what the book is called. It's got a pink cover and it's something like We Need to Talk About Beth or something like that. And it was in the horror section of Half Price Books. And it's got like a picture of like a lady in her underpants bending over. And I was like, that looks like a good horror book, because it's got an unassuming pink sort of girly cover. And I got halfway through and I thought, I've not been terrified one time. Why was this in this section nonsense? But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. But largely it kind of goes to show that you can't just trust that because it's in the kind of genre that you read that it's going to be something that you like. But yeah,
bookstores are so bad.
What? Sorry?
Bookstores and marketing. Yes. I go on tirade. I don't want to say tirades. I try to frame it as not a tirade and kind of just frame it as what it is, which is absolute ridiculous bullshit to sell more books. It's BroMantasy suffers from this highly right now, but it happens in all the genres. But they will, marketing and bookstores will throw anything in the BroMantasy section now because they want it to sell. It's like, oh, this has got a fantasy. and there's a woman in it, and she's the main character. BroMantasy. And it's like, what are you doing? It's so like, I don't really like this discourse. It's very funny. I had a conversation with another reviewer who does a lot of like indie fantasy and it has read BroMantasy. Funny enough, he did like a whole BroMantasy series before I ever even thought of the name, me thinking I'm so original. But anyway, so he's not like he hasn't read it or anything. But he made a good point. He's like, we do a lot of this discourse, and I think it's both sides of it. We do a lot of this discourse where we have this like, if Brandon Sanderson, if Mistborn was written by Brenda Sanderson instead of Brandon Sanderson, it would be a romantasy. And it's kind of like, no, it wouldn't. But I understand the underlying point is what people are trying to get across, and they, in my opinion, most of the time drop the ball and just suck at it. It's very easy for me to get clicks and say, oh, Tress of the Emerald Sea would be a romantasy if Brenda wrote it, and like get a million views. But what's it do for the discourse? Nothing. It just diminishes both sides of the argument in all reality. It just makes people spit fire at each other in the comments because people, man, fantasy book fans, by the way, y'all need to take a breath, touch some grass. Like, holy shit, you guys get way too like personal about this stuff. It's crazy. Like, if somebody hates a book that I loved, I might like say, hey, well, this is why I liked it. And if you're still like, nah, that book sucks, and I'm like, all right, base, not for you. Have a great day. And that's it. I'm moving about. I'm not having a 500 paragraph comment war about why the book is good. Like, you don't like the book. It's fine. But yeah, so that discourse turns into that all the time because people don't expand on why people say it. People don't say that because they think Mistborn is a romantasy. Nobody sane is going to tell you that Mistborn should have been a romantasy. Like, no, the plot is rebellion. I haven't even read the book and I know it's not a romantasy. But the underlying point of it is not about, it's about the gender of the author and how quick marketing and bookstores will shift a female author's book into the romantasy category with even the slightest whiff of romance. And people are like, yeah, but Robin Hobb and Fonda Lee and Janie Wirtz. And I'm like, you're talking about heavily established fantasy authors who have been in the game forever. I'm not talking about these people. Nobody's going to tell me that Jade City's a romantasy. Fonda Lee's not out here writing romantasy, but there's a romance in that book. But the issue is like new books. Like I read The Poet Empress, which phenomenal, by the way, for anybody that's looking for a brand new book that just came out, debut author, great book. I went on to Goodreads and one of the tags was romantasy. That book is not a romantasy. That book is not even about love, in my opinion. I mean, there's some love, but it's not that. It's dark, it's gritty, it's kind of twisted and wrong and has a lot of really deep, dark themes. It is not a romantasy. And that's the problem, is like, that is where the argument over if John Denver wrote The Poet Empress, it would have been marketed as a dark fantasy from the get. And not needed a course correction from people arguing about it online and saying, what are you talking about? Or going on to Goodreads, because not only do you hurt people that would have enjoyed it, but now some romantasy readers don't want to read the darker side of romantasy. They want the nice romantasy, a little bit of magic, a little bit of stakes, but not anything crazy, not people getting tortured, not people dying in descriptive ways. And now that person's going into this book and they're rating that shit a 1. Because they're like, you told me this was romantasy. What are you talking? This is awful. There's no love. I don't like this. This is mean. This book made me sad. This book was terrible. It's just, it hurts everybody, mostly readers, to be honest, because now I've spent money on a book because I trusted that the genre was correct. And I hate it.
Yeah. Again, that's not something that I normally ever really worry about. I think because like being in this space, I've already said like 50 times already, I love reading horror, but I'll pretty much read anything, especially now. Like I never used to be like that, but I very much, like, I don't really care that much about genre. I don't read exclusively romance because it doesn't interest me in any way. It's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be something that excites me, unless like one of them dies. But oh my god, what is with my brain today? It just keeps farting. My
I feel
brain
like
keeps
I threw
farting.
you off with this late start time because
You didn't.
you're 5 hours, right?
I'm in Texas, dude.
Oh, you're in Texas.
Yeah.
You said British. I just made the assumption that you were on the other side of the pond. See? The internet.
I was at one point. Not now.
You were the one. You made a very pointed thing about the British part, and I was like, okay.
About my sarcasm and that I have like really thick skin.
No, I know.
Listen,
I'm just trying to make an excuse, okay, on why I just made an assumption here. I'm looking for an out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, but I think doing things the way that you're doing it, you are using the sort of fantasy veil to kind of like lure people in. Like, if you like these elements, hang on, let me tell you about these other things you've not really considered before. Who would you say, if at all, is your target audience for your reviews and, you know, your efforts in the space?
I would say that like my target audience is people who like stories that they can emotionally connect to, regardless of what genre that falls in. I read everything, like even horror. Like I've read a horror or two. Don't get me wrong. I've read some Stephen King. You know, the horror author, basically. But it's more so for me, it's very much just like, can I connect with the story? Am I going to enjoy it? And like, I can talk about Sun Eater all day, but I can't give you detailed breakdowns of what happens in each book. To be honest with you, I'm a horrible person to ask about books until you finished a series, if I finished it, because I can't remember when things happened in what book. Yeah, most of the time. Like, there's big points that I'll remember, like, but normally, again, those are highly emotional, highly attached to the situation. They've made me feel some kind of way, whether that's sad, happy, you know, joyful, you know, even grief. And that, in my opinion, is why stories work, at least for me, and I think most people, is you remember how you felt when you read your favorite book. You don't remember every detail about it. Even horror, like if you have a horror, and the one thing you always take away from horror is like that time where you just felt that, like, you know, like that shock moment. You might not remember a single thing. You might not even remember who the main character was, but you're going to remember the moment. You're going to remember what led to it, what happened around that moment, and how you felt about it, without giving like a detailed thing. So I don't lock into a genre for the most part. I want to say that it's probably, you know, it's definitely more fantasy sci-fi for sure, just because that tends to be, like I talked about earlier, where you're kind of forced to have that emotional connection. I also just read Heated Rivalry. I thought it was great. Like it was nice. It was heavy on the spice. I will say that.
I assumed as much.
Yeah, and you know, I made a joke reel about it, but like, it didn't make me gay. Like, you know, much to
shocking
several people's disappointment, but it's just people kept telling me that book's gonna make you gay, and I was like, you need an education.
Yeah, that's not how that works, buddy.
But again, like it was a good story, and I thought, like, emotionally, I think is why people enjoy that story so much. Like, people like the spice. Don't get me wrong, especially if that's your thing, like you're into it. But it's the takeaways of that story. It's a story about self-discovery. It's a story about self-worth. It's a story about navigating a society that tells you that you're wrong for the thing that you love. You know, that's why that story is so impactful, and that's why it has exploded, in my opinion. It has nothing to do with two gay hockey players. It doesn't matter. It could have been, you know, a straight guy and girl that played field hockey and hockey. It could have been, you know, two lesbian women that played some sport. It's not about the context of the sexuality of it. It's about what the deeper meaning behind it is, and that, like, just level of trying to fit into a society that tells you that you're wrong for being the person you are. And I think anyone can relate to that, regardless if you're somebody who is questioning their sexuality, or somebody who has to hide their sexuality, or if you're just a person who, you know, I grew up as a heavy kid. That was always a difficult thing. Your self-worth gets tied to your weight, and, you know, what size shirt you wear, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, if you can make a parallel to your life and it's impactful to you, I think the story will be exponentially better, and it's one you're going to recommend and one you're going to remember.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that you're able to kind of just like read whatever, because you're here for the plot, but you really need it.
Yeah, I'm picking up the Playboy for the articles.
Yeah. So E.L. Montague has a recommendation for you. It's called The Gargoyle by Andrew Davidson. I've never heard of it before. You might have. Oh, maybe he recommended that to me before. I can't remember. Anyway, that would be called BroMantasy now.
Yeah. That's see, I want to find more stuff like that. I copied it out of the chat too, so I wouldn't lose it. I do want to find some older stuff that would have been like, I've thought about like doing like a little series on it where it's like 20 years ago this would have been fantasy romance and now it's romantasy, and like vice versa. Like this book, if it was published today, would have been a romantasy.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. There's not, I have not found a male author that has written a romantasy that wasn't just a cash grab.
Interesting.
Genuinely, the closest thing I've ever read, and I'm sorry, I love Jay Kristoff to death. I think his books are incredible. It's one of my favorite series is Empire of the Vampire. I will die on the hill that book is a romantasy. I don't give a shit what people say. That book is a romantasy. And for anybody that wants to argue with me, I always point them to his Instagram. He has a highlight on his Instagram called Bromantasy, where he dives into this. And because people find his books in the romance section, they find his books in the romantasy section, and they'll like send him, Instagram and tag him in the story or whatever. And he's like, he goes into it why the love is a pivotal plot point in that book. And without it, the book doesn't work. There's no motivation. There's no character motivation, and I truly, that argument could be made in a lot of books, but it would take a significant rewrite for that book to still work.
Yeah.
Like I made this joke about it with like Game of Thrones or like Red Rising. Oh, your favorite books of romantasy. Like that was the first thing that ever went viral, was a carousel I did where it was like, I forget exactly how I framed it, but it was like, your favorite book's probably a romantasy and you don't even realize it or something. And then like I listed like 10 books that were like all popular fantasy books, from Red Rising to Sun Eater to The Witcher. And I was like, every one of these, based on industry definition of the plot falls apart if you pull the romance out, would be a romantasy. Game of Thrones, all of them. I don't agree with it. I think it's stupid. The whole point of the post was that they broadly define the genre on purpose so that they can fit whatever they want in it. But I think if it requires a significant rewrite of the plot when you pull the romance out, or if it requires a significant rewrite of the fantasy when you pull the fantasy out, that's a romantasy in my opinion. It needs to be equal. People will say, oh, the romance, a lot of people that read romantasy will say the romance has to drive the plot. I don't think that's the case for me, at least. I think that it needs to have equal lanes of fantasy and romance for it to work. And if you pulled either of them out, the story doesn't work. That is how I define romantasy. So I am like in the camp of like, people will argue with me about Throne of Glass all the time. I'm like, that's epic fantasy up until like book 6. Then she definitely crosses. Which, if you look at the release history, it tracks, because that's when ACOTAR was blowing up.
Well, I think that's a fairly decent definition, because especially if you're trying to like convince people to read books and they're more averse to reading something that would be defined as actual romantasy, if you're able to like draw that line and be like, okay, so that might be on that shelf, but let me tell you about all of the like tens of thousands of things within this book that you're actually going to enjoy, as you have kind of made the point a few times, it can be a really good way of creating character development and to make you buy in emotionally to the story. Because a lot of people don't want to read something that is like largely romance and then also there's fairies and stuff. So yeah, I think it's really cool what you're doing. And as I've said before, I can't remember if it was before we started or not. I keep talking to dudes who are encouraging other dudes to read, and
Yes.
I love that very much. I think we need more of that. We need more guys supporting each other because, like, women, I think we'll feel like we've got that down to a pat. We know how to support each other and encourage each other to do stuff like this, and we need more men, I think, who are comfortable to be like, "Hey, why don't you try this thing? It might have something that you are not so familiar with, or that you might be scared of, but I trust me, you might enjoy it." And then all of a sudden, we get this generation of people that are like, "Oh shit, reading's cool."
Yeah,
I
I
really
mean,
like that.
I reading has changed how I view so much. And
Mhm,
like, I touched on the beginning, like I hadn't read in like 14 years
mhm.
prior to like last year.
Yeah.
And but I will say, what do they call it? A core memory.
Yeah.
Um, Fundamentally changed how I think about things and have reread it as an adult, actually due for a reread. But
Mm.
The Giver by Lois Lowry. My 4th grade teacher read that to us. I don't know if he was supposed to do that or not. I think, but because that reading that as an adult later, I was kind of like, that's kind of heavy for a 4th grade read. But it's a very short book. If you haven't read it, it's
Mhm,
incredible. It has so many deep themes and like just taps into so many things. But the whole reason I'm laying into this is
mhm,
that I think what so many people, especially the younger generation, lacks is empathy.
mhm,
Empathy for another person, empathy for another person's situation, another person's circumstances, their walk through life, different lenses. Like reading opens up, it forces you to be empathetic, whether you want to be or not. Because
mhm,
if you can't have that empathetic piece while you're reading a book, you're not going to enjoy. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's Morning Glory Milking Farm or if it's Lord of the Rings. If you don't have some type of like empathetic feel for it where you can take these things away from it,
mm,
then you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to not read the book. You're not going to read any book because even I would say even like a nonfiction autobiography, if you don't have empathy for what the person the book is about has gone through,
mm,
then you don't you're just not gonna enjoy it. You're not gonna
mm,
have a good time, and I think it forces people to think. I think it forces people to try to understand a different view that they may not have. Like, I brought up heated rivalry and, like, I joked about it not making me gay and stuff like that because that
mhm.
was the discourse around it,
Yeah.
but what I think is so important about that book is it gave me a perspective, and it's funny because Alex and I had actually talked about this because we were
Mhm,
DMing about it when I was reading it,
mhm,
is, not to get too into the details and into the woods on it, but the power dynamic of a gay relationship.
mhm,
Um, I just from life and experience and what I, know and conversations I've had, I don't turn around and ask the gay people in my life what they do in their bedroom.
mhm,
Just like I wouldn't ask, the straight people in my life what they do in their bedroom. It's just a weird conversation to have,
mhm.
in my opinion.
Yes.
Um, but it also led me to just assume that media and everything else, implicitly biased me to say you have a dominant role and
Mhm,
a submissive role in a relationship. And
mhm,
reading that book, you get the view of like, while it's heavy on the spice, I took away was that I just didn't realize that role switched like
mhm,
fluidly.
mhm,
And again, I can't blanket statement everybody and da 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 da,
mhm,
but it's just something I would have never known had I not read this book through the lens of a life that I don't live.
mhm,
And again, it's fantasy, it's fiction and stuff like that, but it's the same people that tell you you can't take anything away from fiction. It's not literary. Da, 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 da.
mhm,
The tired argument. I think that reading anything, in my opinion, outside of like a medical journal, you're
mhm.
going to take away a lot. I mean, even that you're going to learn,
Yeah.
but it's just. I think we just need so much more of that, and I'm so happy that there's so many young creators on the platform. Like I'm
Mhm.
old. I am old. I am way too old to be doing dumbass shit on Instagram, but here we are. Uh, but seriously, like the younger kids, they're reading the classics, which I think is great.
Mhm,
You know what I mean? I have not read a ton of them myself outside of like what was required reading in school, but I think there's a lot of lessons to be taken away. There's a reason that they're the classics. There's a
mhm,
reason classic fiction is so popular right now
mhm,
because books like East of Eden change your view on the world and on life. Because you read about these experiences of these people. It doesn't matter if it's real. It matters that this is what they went through, and because it was based on something that was probably real, that is the takeaway, in my opinion. And I think that's why it's so important that people pick up a book and stop doom scrolling TikTok. And like, I get no benefit out of people like scrolling. Like, I appreciate it. I want to be very clear when I say this part. I appreciate it. I am humbled by it every day. I'm mind blown by it every day, to be honest with you. But it's vanity metrics. For most of it, it's vanity numbers. Like, I tell people all the time, they're like, I'll get a DM from somebody every time like I pass another 1,000 followers. And I'm like, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I had no idea. Because I'm not looking at it. I think it's a vanity number. It opens doors, but that's it. That's all the follower number does. What I care about is engagement rate. And the reason I say that, not to get into the technical social media weeds, but that tells me that I'm having meaningful conversations, and people aren't just scrolling by and liking. I don't need 100,000 people to like my reel of me yelling about BroMantasy and fairy smut like an idiot. What I want is the discourse and conversation that comes from that. And this is just a platform. This is the world that we live in. This is the way people consume media. So this is my way of being able to kind of start those conversations like this one. I wish every conversation was like this, but unfortunately, that is just not the world that we live in right now. So I will at least try to fit this hour-long conversation into 30 seconds, which, let me tell you, is a fun time.
Yeah, it's also not very easy when you're using messages as well, because there's loads of inflection that you miss, and not everybody is like looking and waiting for your response, and then you're like, are they mad at me or whatever? But there are a couple of things that I want to ask before we part ways today, and one of them is something that El Montague asked. So, do you accept like requests for reviews?
So, I did. Right now I'm not. Okay. And the reason behind that is because when I was doing this, so like, I mean, we talked about indie a little bit, and I should have talked about it more, frankly, but I love indie. I try to prop up as much indie as I can. I try to read as much indie as I can, and I try to get the word out about books. Like, two of my top 5 reads last year were indies. Umbra by Amber Toro, by the way, Cymantasy, if anybody wants a space opera with a romance and bonded rider trope, go read it. All right, my one pitch and shill. And I will always shill that book. Amber, I tell her all the time I'm going to send her a bill. But no, but I had to stop because I'm a people pleaser, and I want to read everything. I genuinely do. I want to read everything. I also have 2 kids, a full-time job, and now I'm making content on top of everything else. So it has significantly lowered my amount of time I can read, and I said yes to a lot when I broke like 3,000 followers. And then I broke 15K. And that happened over the course of like a month. And I also got tapped to do judging assistant on self-published fantasy blog off by so I'm on Abel Montero's team, but that added 5 books to my TBR that I need to read in a time frame. So pretty much I can't say yes to people anymore, because I'm saying yes to be nice, and then I'm gonna have to sit here and like backpedal and constantly message back and forth with you about why I'm not reading your book for another 6 months. And it's just, I'd rather be transparent and honest than try to make people happy in the moment to only disappoint them later. I'd rather be upfront and be like, hey, I just can't do it. It doesn't mean I never will again. And I will definitely post about it when I'm accepting ARCs and stuff. The website has a whole thing on the links page about it when you click into it. So yeah, cool. That was my incredibly long way of saying no.
No, thank you for justifying it, because it's hard in this space, especially when you're dealing with independently published authors. It's because you really want to support them, but if you don't have the capacity to do it, then it's just easier to say no. But we really want to do it, but can't right now, but we will maybe, possibly in the future. So my final question that I am going to ask you, and I usually ask authors this, but because you're all talking about growth and reach and things like that, what does success look like to you with this thing that you're doing?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
No, genuinely though, like it's because I haven't really thought too deep on it. Like I call it a vanity number. The growth is a vanity number, in my opinion. Like you see so many 100,000 follower accounts that have no engagement. They just post crap over and over again, and they had a couple viral things, and that's it. I genuinely, the follower number opens doors, like I mentioned. But my goal genuinely is to be able to get people to try things that they normally wouldn't, or that they think aren't for them, but also to give people a space that are told, like, I joke about it, but like, that's not for you. Like, if I critique BroMantasy, I'm fortunate where my comments are usually positive and fine and whatever, and respectful discourse. I will have people sometimes say, "Oh, like, well, that wasn't written for you." Why? Why wasn't it written for me?
Yeah.
Is it that it wasn't written for me, or was it not written for me because I didn't like it?
Interesting.
Because if I liked it, you'd say it was for me. So it's just that kind of stuff. It's very much framing. It's very much, I want to be able to say the quiet part out loud, but in a way that doesn't feel like an attack on things.
Yeah, something that's more digestible.
Yeah, because I think that's the best way to get conversations happening. And genuinely, at the end of the day, I want to be able to read an indie book I love, tell people about it, and change the trajectory of that author's, personal experience, book sales. Like, at the end of the day, like, that would be incredible. Like, being able to say, hey, like I just did for Umbra, like I'll sit here and chill Umbra or whatever. I want to be able to say, I loved this book. Everyone needs to go pick up this book and have it actually matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it almost sounds a little selfish and a little big-headed, and that's why I don't really love it. I don't know. I got to find a better way to frame it.
It's a weird tightrope to walk, because you're like, I really want to be able to make impact, but in order to make it an impact, people have to know who you are, and for people to know who you are, you kind of have to have a bit of a big head about it. So you win, you lose, whatever. As long as you're achieving the thing that you want to achieve, then whatever.
I want to do all of that and never not be authentic. I will say that I will never. If you catch me chasing some stupid ass trend, scream at me, DM me. Tell me to stop being a moron. Genuinely though, like, I don't want to lose. I think the most influential creators on this platform are the most genuine, and I've always said that.
Yeah,
I think that authenticity will carry you. It may be a slower trajectory, but it is going to carry you and carry you and carry you. Like, a really good example of this, and if for those of you that don't follow him, is Smitty, who is Vino Poppy, I forget the numbers, on Instagram, and he's huge on TikTok, whatever. But he has filmed the same way in his bedroom for years, talking about books that he loves. And he reads across genres. He reads indie, fantasy, the whole 9 yards. And he is one of those people where if he makes a book rec now, that book's gone. Like, that's everybody's trying to get it. And it's amazing, but it's because he was so authentic from the start. Like, he's never changed it up. He never, did all these crazy things, did chase trends, whatever. It was just, he talked about books and he was passionate about it and he was authentic. And like, that is always my goal. Like, if I'm suggesting something, it's not because somebody paid me to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's because I genuinely enjoyed the thing. Now, if I can make those two things line up at one point, that'd be sick. But I will genuinely say, like, I value my authenticity and my voice more than money. And I'm in a very privileged and fortunate place to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And I recognize that as well. But it's the same reason I don't leave my job for an extra 75K, because I'm not going to sell my soul, and my freedom and my ability to do what I need to do with my kids is much more important to me than money. And I treat this very similarly.
That's awesome. Well, I have loved hearing about what you do and how passionate you are, and I thoroughly recommend checking out BroMantasy.com and seeing what Devin is all about, because it's a really refreshing way of viewing reviews and recommendations, and I think that your authenticity is very infectious, and you clearly give a massive shit about what you do, and there is no stopping you now, and I can see that you're probably going to reach the stars in no time. So I am proud of you, stranger that I only met recently. And thank you again for your time. Yeah, go check it out. I'm threatening you, strange person, watching this.
Strangers on the internet.
Yes. Yeah, I just appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I loved this. This was so much fun.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm gonna awkwardly wave at the camera, and we're going to say our goodbyes. And thank you, Alex, for being here. And thank you all for watching. I always forget, because you're like these disembodied creatures that live in the internet to me. Thank you for joining us today. If you're watching the recording, thank you for spending your time with us. And yeah, I'm going to make sure I click the right button. And goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.